was telling the church last week how excited when I became when I used to be a counselor, the way I knew that God was calling me to be a pastor, to be a teacher, was I got to where when I would be counseling someone in a marriage counseling or another counseling session, that I would start imagining that I was telling that to a group of people. So I'm excited to be teaching this, and I hope you guys are ready to listen. And I want to... How many of you guys, there's times, right, where it's easier to be connected with God, right? I mean, there are times it's just natural. But there are other times that I found that when you're the busiest, have you noticed that? When you're the busiest, God kind of gets pushed out. Let me tell you, this week was a crazy week, and Friday I was trying to finish up the sermon, and I got a call that somebody had a heart attack, and they were at Baylor, Dallas, and it was the middle of traffic time, and I knew it was going to take me a long time to get there, but I was trying to get this video out because I wanted to get a video out and put it up on YouTube for you guys to kind of talk about this session and the importance of what we're going to be teaching. And so I set up in here, and it just went really good. I got it done in like 2 takes, and I got it edited and all that other kind of stuff, and I'm hurrying, I'm looking at my watch, and I'm going, the traffic is going to be terrible, and I got it put up, and I have a very wise wife. You know what I'm saying? And y'all that are around me, you know that I married way, way, way above myself. And Lisa's an encourager, and she also will just tell me when I'm wrong. I mean, it just happens. And I get mad, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I get mad, and then I remember how smart she is. But Friday night, I got home, and I put this video up, and it came out the way I expected, and I said, hey, because I love Lisa's feedback, and usually right after I do something, like on a Sunday morning, she'll tell me I did real good, and then she'll wait till like Wednesday to tell me how much I screwed up. But when I'm on the high and when I'm needing somebody's approval, she'll give it to me. Well, I said, hey, you need to see my video. And so she paused what she was watching on TV, and I showed her, and I'd already uploaded on YouTube, and I'd uploaded on Vimeo. I'd already uploaded on our page, on our website, by the way. We have a section called Marriage Channel, and I'm putting from different teachers' teachings up there, so go check that out. But she looked at it, and she's not smiling. And I said, well, what's the matter with it? She goes, you kind of left God out of this video. I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, because I was saying, you know how I counsel people and their lives had been changed and they learned it and all. And she goes, it just sounded like you took all the credit. And I was ticked. I was so stinking mad. It had been a busy day, and I'd spent time all that. And after I got over the mad, I watched the video again. And if some of y'all were on Facebook and you saw me put it up, you might have noticed that just about 30 minutes later, I took it back down. Because that's really what happened. I was busy, and it sounded like I was just telling everybody what a great counselor I was. And I left out something that's very important. You know, there's all kinds of books out there on how to have better marriages. And I want to tell you something. Those things work to an extent. But without the supernatural, without the love of God involved, you can learn 10 steps all day long. And you can play them out pretty good. But let me tell you something. The marriages that are the strongest, the marriages that will keep going, the marriages that can work better through conflict are the marriages where people are really committed to God as the center of their marriage. Because that's where the love comes from. So anyway, that's what I hope that you remember as we go through this. Because I'm going to teach some things where, let's just make a rule, okay? Let's just make a rule. As I'm teaching this, you're learning it for you. You're not learning it for your spouse. When I used to see, when I was counselor, I would see more women than men, and I would do marriage counseling with women, and they would go back, and what I would say is, your husband won't come to counseling. That's okay. You can still make this thing work, but what you got to realize, you're learning this for you. You cannot open that book that I tell you to read and sit it beside the toilet hoping he's going to find it and read that information. So what I'm teaching you today is for you, okay? so that means you can't do this. And please don't argue on the way home. Don't argue on the way home. Guys, you got my permission to say, Royal said don't argue on the way home. So wait till you get home and the windows are closed and nobody can hear you. But you know what I'm saying? You're learning it for you. And if you'll go into becoming a better person in the relationship, if you go in becoming a better Christ follower, I promise you're going to become a better father. You're going to be a better mother, if you're a female. You're going to be a better husband. You're going to be a better wife, and it will change you. But please learn this for you. And it's okay to pray that your spouse you should always be praying for your spouse. But what I found is, especially if one is more interested in changing than the other, then you're nagging him to do what I teach you to do is not going to help at all. You'll be breaking the rules. If you'll live it out and walk the walk and talk the talk, there's a whole lot better chance of your spouse changing than if you're constantly telling him or her that they have to change. So let's start off with this. You should have some notes. And the first thing on your notes is this. You ready? Your love maturity is an indicator of your spiritual maturity. Your love maturity is an indicator of your spiritual maturity. Look, if you're having relationship problems with people, then you're also having relationship problems with God. I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, it's all about love God and love people. And you can tell where you're at spiritually by looking at where you're at in relationship with other people. Your love maturity is an indicator of your spiritual maturity. If you want to be a better Christian, and I'm going to tell you something, I see this all the time with Christians. I see this with Christians who are they think they're so spiritually mature because they're at the church every time the door opens. They get up every morning and spend an hour reading their Bible. But let me tell you something. If you're not practicing and you're not walking the walk, and if you're not the good news to your spouse, then you're just going to get frustrated, depressed, and everything else, because you've got to be living it out. And the first place to live it out is not at church. The first place to live it out is at home with your wife and with your husband. The first place to live it out is with your children. If your children see you being a better Christian with everybody else than you're being with them, you are failing miserably. So your spiritual maturity is, you could just look at how you're doing in the love area to figure that out. Philippians 1, 9 and 11 through 11, the Apostle Paul writes, "And this is my prayer for you guys, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and in depth of insight." I loved in that song how it talked about how love isn't just this feeling. We get caught up in, we fall in love with somebody. That's why we say we fall in love. It just happens. Boom. Sometimes for me it was like first sight. It really was. I mean, I saw Lisa sitting on the tailgate of a friend's car when we were at the Gibson's parking lot in Irving, and I was 17 years old and she was 16, and it was love at first sight, and I didn't even know her. That you fall in love, you do that. But all that feeling stuff, it doesn't last very long. Let me tell you something. You can commit to the action of love, but you cannot commit to the feeling of love. And I'm gonna say something that people are gonna think is just a flat out sin. Okay, there's gonna be people in here that are just gonna be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. I just want to say this: you cannot commit to unconditionally feeling like you're in love for the rest of your marriage. You cannot commit to that. You can't. Because I want to tell you something, most of the time, or a lot of the time, you're going to be loving when you don't feel like you're loving. When it doesn't feel good that's when your faith is tested. Anybody can love somebody that's making them feel in love. The trick is to being able to love God and focus on God and do the things that God wants you to do, even when it's not going right and when it's not feeling right. Verse 10, "So that you may be able to discern what is best and may be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory and the praise of God." Let me tell you something. Here's why you love somebody. This has to be your commitment. I commit to loving God, which means I'm going to commit to loving you. That has to be the commitment. And I see this survey comes out every year, all the time. Somebody's doing a different survey, and they say, divorce rate is about 50%. Do y'all know that most of the surveys say the divorce rate in a typical church member is worse than the divorce rate in the world? But for a couple that loves God, serves God together, prays together, studies their Bible together, practices the biblical principles, divorce rate goes to 1 in 1,100. That's pretty darn good. It's pretty good. And those of you that do, you know what I'm talking about. You're not just committed to the marriage. If you're just committed to the marriage, again, that's a big fail. You got to be committed to God, and the marriage part is going to fall in right behind. So your love maturity level, the next thing on your notes, your love maturity level is based on the focus of your love. Your love maturity level is based on the focus of your love. Now remember, I'm not teaching you this for the sake of your spouse. You're listening to me for you. That's the only way this is going to work. You already know that your focus is wrong if you're doing this. You know what I'm saying? Love maturity level is based on the focus of your love. If your main reason that you love somebody is because you get back out of it something that you want, then that's much more what kind of focus? Self-focus. Well, that puts you on the immature level. And the more mature you get, it's based on the focus on the other. And if you'll write right above other, put God. Because it just works out this way. If your focus is really on your relationship with God, then the other's going to fall right in there. The other's going to fall right in there. The more spiritually mature, the easier it is to give away love. The more spiritually mature you are, the easier it is to give away love. And I've used this illustration before, but hang with me just a second. Look at John 3:16. This is like Tebow didn't make this famous. This was already famous before this happened. Before he even was born, this was famous. For God so what? Loved the world that it's about giving. Love is about giving. And look, if you're not very generous, then you're not a lover. That's all there is to it. We usually love... See, what I would hear from people all the time in counseling sessions is this fear to give their love away because they've been hurt by people. Man, I can't tell you how many women have sat in my office and said, I will never love another man again. That's just never going to happen. And a month later I'm going, I thought you were never going to love a man again, because they're right back in. See, that we go into these things wanting for us. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It's about giving it away. And for me, the best way, and I'll just give you, and some of y'all heard this, so bear with me, but I think this is the best way to understand. If you were to walk into your house today and open your bedroom and it was full of money, how many would be happy? I mean, like, what would you do? I mean, I know money doesn't make you happy, but man, it would be cool trying. You know what I'm saying? But I stole that from my wife, by the way. But if you went in, let's just say you went in and this, we got to wait so many days to see if somebody claims it or whatever, and all of a sudden you thought, I'm going to spend, nobody's going to even know that I'm going to spend. And you take some of that money and you go buy a new car, and man, this is just, I've never had a car like this. This is just so cool. It just feels so good. And the next day you go in, you're going to buy something else, you open it and you go, it's back. There's more money than there was yesterday. I mean, the money that I took away is... So what am I going to buy now? So you go buy something else for yourself. And you go back and you buy something else for yourself. And just an amazing thing happens to the average person. When you get to the point where you feel like there's no risk of anything, of losing something, what are you willing to do with it? Give it away. So all of a sudden you go, I'm going to buy my mom a new house. I'm going to buy my neighbor their car broke down, and I'm going to, and you just start giving it away. Why? Because there's no risk. Can I just tell you something? That's the way God's love works. As a matter of fact, the more love that you give away, the more love that you're going to feel if you're getting your love from God. Now, if you're giving your love to somebody else and they're not giving it back and you're getting ticked off, then you're not really giving your love away. What you've got to do is you've got to take God's love and you've got to give it away. And the more spiritually mature you get, the easier it's going to be to do that. And the more you do that, the more spiritually mature you're going to get. Letting God be the one to meet your love needs. Mature love is given to make the other better. Mature love gives to make the other better. Mature love gives to make the other better. Your goal should be to make your spouse better. You know, a lot of times we go in and we're just got this battle we're trying to win all the time, but it's about making the other person better. So let's just look at the work of giving love. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about things like communicating love and everything. But let's just look at the hard work. Okay, take feelings out of this for just a minute. Okay, let's take feelings out of this completely, and let's just look at, if I'm going to be giving away love, how do I go about doing that? Okay, number one is this: give love by understanding, by learning to understand. All the books that you read out there about learning to be a better spouse, a lot of them are learning what the other person needs, isn't it? I mean, how many of y'all found out after you married somebody that she just doesn't think like I do all the time? Or, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just, when you're madly in love, you just think, oh, everything's in common. And as soon as you start paying the bills and all that, you're going, I never did it that way. My mom didn't do it that way. We don't do, you know what I'm saying? It's just different. Why would you do that? You know, my wife is a list person, and she doesn't do this anymore. We've been married for a long time. And she used to make me a list and put it on my dressing table, and I'd go, a list, and I'd take it and I'd put it in my pocket, and I'd get home that night, I'm taking my pants off, and she'd go, how you do on the list? And I go, oh, I forgot. We just think different. I'm going, we can do this tomorrow. We have arguments like this at our house all the time. We can do this tomorrow. Why do you have to do this today? Matter of fact, we could argue about doing this tomorrow. We don't even have to argue about doing this today. But it's just a different way to go about doing things. But what we've got to learn is we've got to understand where the other person's coming from. Let me tell you, my wife keeps our house immaculate. Well, is anybody else with me on this? Why make a bed when you're going to mess it up again that night? Am I the only person? Does anybody else think like that? Come on, Rich. Okay, well, there we go. There's a female back there that thinks the same thing. So, but you know what? On days that I get up last, we have a rule that you have to make the bed if you're the last one up. So I got tired of racing her up, so I just decided that I'm going to make the bed. So what happens is usually I don't make the bed right when I get up. See, if you get up to go to the bathroom and I come back, the bed's made oftentimes. But the way it works, but for me, if Lisa's going to be home at 3:40, that bed is made at 3:37 with a couple of minutes left, and it really bothers me when she shows up early all of a sudden one day, and I'm trying to go get the mail. I'm going to get, but let me tell you something. You know why making that bed is important to me? Because it's important to Lisa. I'm still okay with leaving it. And we'll wash it every once in a while. But that's what we got to realize. We've got to realize that there are certain needs that the other person has an understanding. And what we do when we're giving love away is that we decide that we're going to do things because they're important to our spouse. That's why. The Apostle Paul wasn't married. And he actually wrote a whole section about how, look, if you really want to serve the Lord the best, he said it's best not to be married. He said, now, there's a problem with that. Most of you can't remain, what's the word I'm looking for? Celibate when you're doing that. So, I was thinking celebrate. How would you celebrate? Most people can't. So he goes, look, just so you don't just end up burning in hell because you're then what you're better off married. But he said, the best thing to do would be is if you could have the faithfulness to God. And you know why he said? Because you got to take care of your wife first. He said, I can hop up and get thrown in prison and whipped tomorrow, but that would tick my wife off if I was married. You know what I'm saying? She'd say, honey, stay home. Don't get whipped today. But so we have to realize it. And I see people all the time when they become Christians, they get all excited and they just kind of leave their wife behind. And he's saying, look, you got to look what it says. Where's that verse? 1 Corinthians 7:33. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibilities. And then here we go, guys. Ladies, no elbows. And how to please his wife. The only way you can really please your wife is if you learn to understand what's important to her and make those things important to you. You pay attention to what matters to her. Look, you may be able to get her to just give up one day on not thinking that's important. But let me give you a warning. What happens then is there's a guy that's at her job that thinks what she thinks is important. And that's how affairs happen. When you think I became a police officer one time because I just believed that I was supposed to be helping somebody, and I got hired and I went to 2 weeks at the police academy, and all of a sudden I realized, she usually doesn't sleep with her back to me and not ever talk to me. There was a problem going on. You know what I'm saying? And God worked it out where I actually gave up that and went back and got my old job back. But what had happened was I just decided she doesn't understand. I'm supposed to be helping people, and this is the way that I'm going to do it, and she'll get over it. Guys, I'm just telling you that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And it's important that we give love by understanding the other person. When you understand them too, what it does is it gives them value. The other night I was watching, I DVR the news, and I'm watching the news the other night, and she went and made dinner, and she said, dinner's ready. And I said, okay, if I can just speed through this. I'm thinking it's almost over. I'm not talking to her. I'm just thinking it's almost over. And you can see the living room where we eat. And all of a sudden she goes, that is just so rude. Well, what I was doing was I was giving her no value at all at that point. She told me dinner was ready. She went through the point of making me a plate and all of that. You know what I'm saying? We've got to understand, and when we do that, we give that person value. James 1:19 says, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must all be, what? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. It's about patience, and you're going to see in a minute when I'll show you a list about what love is. That's the first thing. But being able to listen. I'll just tell you, as a human being, as a selfish human being, you've got to learn to become a listener. You have to learn. Now, what I have to be careful of is it's easier for me to listen to someone that I'm trying to gain favor with. Would you agree? And see, where we screw up at home a lot is we've already gained their favor. So we go into this mode of not paying attention and not listening or whatever. But we've got to learn to listen. Number 2. When we love, we do it to help mature. And I put together, at first I put help mature as in that person, but really it's more about helping mature each other. It's helping mature each other. See, here was the amazing thing. When I was a counselor, counseling for God, God's principles, with the Holy Spirit involved, and God changing people's lives, what would often happen is 99% of my clientele were female. Because most guys said, the problem's yours. You need to go get fixed. And they'd come to me angry, and they'd come to me to deal with anxiety and depression, and we'd end up dealing with marital issues. And just an amazing thing would happen. All of a sudden, she'd say, my husband's changing. My husband's changing. As she started acting more spiritually mature, what happened was, and see, God things are so counterintuitive. You know, we don't think like God thinks. God doesn't do things the way we think. We have to win the battle. And then we end up in front of a judge and we end up divorced. We have to win the love by giving the love away. I mean, that's what it's all about. Because what happens is I'll just tell you, if you're honestly, now let me tell you something. If you haven't been good at giving love away up till now, then you'll get tested the first time you start giving your love away. Because they're used to you manipulating them by giving your love away. So, you know, like women are thinking he wants sex and guys are thinking she wants something, or, you know, there's just this, and I haven't figured out exactly what they want, but what I'm saying is because people will come back to me and they're mad. It's like when they test God, they'll test God for a second. If it doesn't work right, they'll go, well, you know. But we do that with our spouses. You got to love to love. You can't love to get something back. And if you'll remember that when you start giving your love away, when they don't trust you, you can't get angry when they don't trust you. They don't trust you because they've got a reason to not trust you. And the more you show love, the more you get to the point where you mature and they're also going to mature. I think one of the most amazing things about marriage is having somebody to figure out life together. Our opportunity to grow spiritually together. Our opportunity to grow together through tough times and then to be able to share those joyful times together. And during all these times, especially during the hard times, it's an opportunity for us to both mature and grow. Remember last week when I talked about everything being spiritual? Everything being spiritual? One of the things you have to realize as a husband or as a wife, and for those of you who are about to get married, it's learn it now. It's important. One of the things you have to learn about, just like everything's spiritual with God, everything is relational with your spouse. I've counseled people that before they got married, the guy went hunting every weekend of hunting season. That's just what he did. And I'm sorry, you don't do that when you're married. Now, what happens a lot of times is wives will just say that's okay, and because they're tired of fighting it, or because they're trying to win your love, or whatever. But let me tell you something. When you're gone all the time and they're there with the 3 kids, they're not thinking about how much they love you. And that guy at the office that's complimenting her on her hair that you ever even noticed is starting to look pretty good about now. You know, we make changes because everything we do is relational. The way I take care of my health is relational. The way I go about doing my job is relational. How many hours I put in during the week is relational. All of those things, the friends that I hang out with, the things that I do, all of those things are relational, just like everything you do is relational in your spiritual walk with the Lord. When you're married, there's no private life. There's I love getting up early enough in the morning before Lisa and having my coffee and sitting in the living room, and I love that. But there's nothing I do that's not. Let me tell you, there's nothing I do that I don't immediately think, how would Lisa think about this? You have to. I can't tell you how many times I've been dealing with people in marriage counseling, and they come in, and the first thing I realize is that they've got these 2 separate lives. It's easy to get divorced when you got 2 separate lives. It's like you've got it all set up for that. They've got their finances separated. I don't know, and I know there's some people, and I think there's even some counselors out there that counsel people this. Can I just say this? It's not a good idea to have 2 separate financial accounts. Somebody's going to always feel cheated. Always. And what we've got to realize is that everything, it all goes into the pot, because the power that comes, there's an Andy Stanley video that I put on our website this week, but he says this in here, he says, there's not two eyes in marriage. There's not two eyes in marriage. The power of marriage comes in the unity of marriage. I just put a few verses here that I think are important. 1 John 3:18, dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other, but let us show the truth by our actions. What do you say? I can't tell you how many guys have sat in my office and go, she knows I love her. If she's saying you don't, there's a reason. There's a reason. You have to give that value. Don't look out only for your own interests, Paul writes in Philippians. Take interest in others too. It's important that you're learning and helping that other person grow, and that their life is important to you. And live a life, look at Ephesians 5:2. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ. He loved us and offered Himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Look, when we're loving our spouse or anybody else very well, it's very pleasing to God the Father. And I don't know if you've realized this, but the more you please God, the more you get blessed. The more you please God, the more you grow in your faith. The more you please God, the more you feel that connection with God, because it's a relationship. Romans 15:5, may God, who gives this patience and encouragement, help you live in complete harmony with each other, as is fitting for the followers of Jesus Christ. Let me tell you something. You're going to fight. When we lived in Maryland for a year and a half, we had this really cool 2-story house, and up there the weather doesn't get as hot, so you had windows that you'd open and you could actually have a breeze come through your house. And we learned to go, shh, the windows are open. When we'd start yelling at each other, you know what I'm saying? We'd start yelling at each other and go, oh, the window's open. We don't have that problem in Texas. But you're going to fight. But what you got to do, and we're going to be talking about this in the last session, you got to fight good. You got to learn from your fight. You got to come out from your fight better than you went into it. So we've got to give love and understanding, and we've got to give love by helping each other grow. And then number 3, love to give value. Love to get value. Besides God, your spouse, relationship-wise, ought to get the most value from you. I don't mean get the most out of you. I mean, what's what I'm looking for? They've got to feel better about themselves because of the way you treat them. That's important if you hadn't figured that out. Again, that's how... Again, I have never had someone sit in my office after an affair going, man, I just couldn't wait. One day I knew I was going to have an affair one day. I just knew it was going to happen, and it just so happened with this guy, and that's the way it worked out. Everybody, over and over and over again, if the person is any kind of decent person at all, they sat in my office and said, I never thought I'd have an affair. Especially women. Guys are pretty shocked too, and greatly relieved when they get caught usually. But let me tell you, if your marriage is bad right now, your spouse is walking around with a big red target on her or his chest, and there's some jerk out there who's looking for somebody they're not supposed to be messing around with to pay compliments to. That's the way it works. And it just and that happens over and over and over again. Your self-worth. Look, I love y'all's compliments, but nothing makes me feel better than when Lisa compliments me. I'm 52 years old. Compliments like you look good in those jeans shouldn't affect me in any way at all. But let me tell you something. If one of y'all said it, I'd be nervous. Especially if Cameron said, you look good in those jeans. But when my wife does, it just makes all the difference in the world. And we learn to give each other self-worth. And we don't just do that by complimenting. We learn to have trust enough that we can also call somebody out when we have to. Like, sounds like you're giving yourself all the credit on that, not God. I was angry for a little while. And then I deleted all those videos. Look at Revelations 2. This is Jesus. This is the Apostle John has been, the Bible says he's either having a dream or he says he's been pulled up into heaven. Theologians will argue about whether it's a dream or not. But he's talking to Jesus, and Jesus is talking about the churches. What kind of different churches are. This church is this way, this church is this way. And look what he says in Revelation 2, 4, 5. He says, but I have this complaint against you. He says, you don't love me or each other as you did at first. Look how far you've fallen. Turn back to me and do the works that you did at first. People, I was counseling this couple one time. This guy was just huge, and his wife was just a little bitty, and he just wasn't affectionate. And we're going to be talking about his needs and her needs here in a couple of weeks, and that's number one on a woman's list. And he said, I had all brothers, and I played football, and I eat beef, and so I can't be affectionate. And so I turned to her, this fragile little cute lady, and I said, can I just ask you a question? Was he affectionate when y'all were dating? Oh, yeah, all the time. He was always doing things for me, bringing me flowers and buying me things and telling me I was pretty. And, you can be affectionate, but what we have to realize is if you want to just kind of, if you want to make a fix on if your marriage just is kind of sliding right now and you're just getting by, and again, one of the best ways to tell whether you're doing that or not is whether you really feel like you want to be around your spouse or not, or whether somebody else is feeling very, very, very inviting. Those are things you got to look at. And if you want to get it back on track, you can do something as simple as do the things you did when you dated. I don't know about you, date nights are important. Lisa and I love, and now that we're empty nesters, we have more date nights. And we don't go out and spend a fortune. We go to Boston Market. We go to, we go buy fried chicken at Tom Thumb and bring it back to the house. Sometimes we'll call that a date night. But that's important. And all we got to do is say, okay, it's a date night, and we're not doing anything special. We're just together. We're paying attention to each other. But it's important that if you want to fix things, all these things I'm going to be teaching you, just go back to, okay, what are the things that... I tell you what, here's a good question for you. If you're not duking it out tonight, ask your spouse, hey, can I ask you a question? What did you fall in love with about me? Now, the men will probably talk about a body part, but the women don't ever talk about the body parts. They talk about affection and the way you smiled and the way you cared about what I was doing. And you can learn a lot of things just by asking a simple, would you just not be mad for just a second? I really want to know, I want to change. What are the things that you fell in love with? And then get back to those. It's important to realize that love is not a feeling. And if you're thinking it's time for a divorce because the feelings aren't there, they won't be there for the next one after a little while. They won't be there. Y'all know the divorce rate goes up every marriage? The divorce rate goes up every marriage. The people that have the best marriage rate of staying together are the people that serve God and love God and that dated for each other and built up a relationship and then anything else after that, it starts falling off. People that live together first, the divorce rate goes up to about 60-something%. People on their second marriage, the divorce rate goes up to close to... You can't keep getting married till you get it right. It goes up to like 70%, and then it goes up to like 80% on divorce rate. It just, you know what I'm saying? But the devil tries to trick us into believing, move in together because you can try it out for a little while and see if it works. But what happens is then as you stop dating, you stop doing the things that you make each other fall in love with. And I just want to tell you something, and I know I talk to people when they're mad and they don't. unless there's some really evil stuff going on, any marriage can be saved. I've counseled with people who were already divorced and they got remarried. I've counseled with people that thought they hated each other's guts, and with some counseling and changing the way they look at things and focusing more on God, it changed. And I'll just tell you that sadly, not all marriages work. But if people are willing to get past the self-centered stuff and focus, you know how, those of you that have been through divorce, you know what it's like. It's very difficult dealing with the children. There's just a whole lot of things. And when we're in the middle of it, we're going, the only way this is possibly going to feel better is if we're not married anymore. And at first there's kind of a relief and everything, but I've counseled a whole lot of people on the other end that just look back and they wish that hadn't happened. Now, for those of you that have, look, when you do go to the second marriage, go different. Don't think you know how to do it. You don't. You failed the first time. So learn it before you get married the second time. There's even a Bible study called Before You Remarry. I mean, there are some things that you've got to learn and know. Look, even if you're 50 years old, get premarital counseling. There's things that you find out when you're sitting in a room together and you go, I didn't know you thought that. Well, that might be a game breaker. Now, I tell you, with all the premarital counseling I did, I only had one couple that I recommend that they not get married. And I had one other couple that decided not to get married. And the one that decided to get married, they're still married 14 years later. So I wasn't always right? And then number 4, love God and you will be able to love people. Love God and you will be able to love people. 1 John 2:10, anyone who loves another brother or sister is living in the light and does not cause others to stumble. And then here's my, okay, look at 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7. I'm finishing with this one. All right, we're there. We're at the end. I discovered one day that if people will take this passage, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, and I call it the love checklist, and you guys have heard me teach on it before. If you'll take this is a description of love. So if your spouse says to you, you don't love me, what they mean is, you're not this. When you think that you're loving somebody, then you can take out this checklist. And I didn't put it on a card for you because I think it's very important for you to do it. Go home and get a 3x5 card, get something that you can carry with you, and you make a list of what love is. And then what happens is when you get in a fight and you're driving down the street and you get to Antwerp, I mean, in your neighborhood, if you get to... Then what happens is all of a sudden you can go, because here's what God does to me. He'll say, go back and fix this. And then He'll go, were you patient? Were you just being kind? And dude, you talk about get convicted quickly. I've seen marriages saved, relationships saved, people who were... I had one guy, the first time I used this, I had a guy whose wife, they were in the middle of divorce, wouldn't even answer the door or the phone, and I got him to start praying through this and just praying through with the right attitude so that when he did talk to her, and all of a sudden their marriage turned around, they moved back in together, they had their first children, and it was all goes back to him focusing on this. Look at this. This is just so natural. Well, it's not natural, it's supernatural. But here's the thing you got to realize. When you look at this, you've got to go, how can I do all that? Well, you can do all this because this is what Jesus is. If your friend says, why do you follow Jesus? You don't say because He's that mean guy that makes me do all these things. And if you say things like, He died on the cross and He rose from the dead, they go, you're crazy. But if you go, He's patient. And He's so kind. He's never jealous or boastful or proud. He's not rude. He doesn't demand His own way. He's not irritable. Is anybody feeling convicted yet? He keeps no record of wrongdoing, of being wronged. He does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. He never gives up on me. He never loses faith. He always hopeful, and He endures, loves me through every circumstance. If someone was to come to me and say, you know what, Royal, give me 2 things that will make my marriage the best thing it would possibly be, I would say, put God first and love like this.